Thank you. Good morning. I'm American, I'm loud, so let's try that again. Good morning. All right. You can't go anywhere in marketing and in the general press without running into discussions about large language models like ChatGPT and GPT-4, Google Bard, Microsoft Copilot, Microsoft Bing, etc. What are these things and why are people talking about them so much? How many of you currently use or have tried something like ChatGPT? Raise your hands. Very nice. About more than half the room. Excellent. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. For those who are unfamiliar, this is what one of the interfaces looks like. This is ChatGPT with the variety of models accessible to it. What you do is you type into it like a chatbot and it gives you answers. It gives you answers that are uncanny, sometimes disturbing, but always very, very interesting. Today what we want to do is explain a bit more about how these things work and then how they're going to be changing the way that you do your marketing. Here's Google Bard. This is Google's entry into the fray of large language models. They have not done quite as good a job. When we talk about models, you should hear the word software. If you think about software, a large language model is a piece of software written by a machine, right? So you use Microsoft Word, right? That's a piece of software written mostly by humans. Language models, and all AI models, are pieces of software written by machines. So when you hear someone say, an AI model, it's just a piece of software, right? It's not much different conceptually than, say, Candy Crush. It just does different things. To clarify some of the terminology, there is an interface to these models, and then there are the models themselves. The interfaces are things like ChatGPT, Bing, Google Bard, etc. These are how you, the human, talk to these things. The models themselves are lovely named things like GPT 3.5 Turbo, GPT-4, Palm, etc. The reason we say this is because when you're talking to particularly vendors who are offering solutions, you want to be sure that you're talking to them, that they're talking about the right sorts of things. I got a pitch the other day from a vendor who was talking about ChatGPT-4, and I said, you have no idea what you're talking about, so I can't trust anything you say. What is a large language model? Where did these things come from? All language models, all natural language processing and artificial intelligence begins with this phrase from John Rupert Firth in 1957, the linguist, who said, "You shall know a word by the company it keeps." You shall know a word by the company it keeps. And we know this to be true from our own experiences as human beings who use language. We only know what a word means based on the words around it. For example, if I said, "I'm brewing the tea," it's pretty clear what I'm doing. I'm making a beverage out of a dried leaf, essentially, the Camellia sinensis plant. I'm brewing the tea. If I say I'm spilling the tea, one word change changes the meaning of the other words, right? For those folks like me who have a bit more gray in their hair, this is a slang for gossiping, right? So I'm brewing the tea, I'm spilling the tea. One word change that changes the word tea, right? And what it means. If I say I'm brewing the tea, most of the folks in here understand what that means. If I say the tea I'm brewing, you can still understand this, right? But this is a slightly different construction. It changes the focus. It changes how words work. If I say brewing I'm tea the, this makes no sense whatsoever to us who speak English. But if you speak Hebrew or Gaelic or a few other languages which are verb, subject, object, this actually would be perfectly sensible in those languages. Right? So part of large language models is understanding how words influence each other within the context of the language itself. For example, again, I said I'm from America. We often say for rent. Here you say to let. Right? And so a large language model would have to distinguish between UK English and American English to understand what words to spit out. Right? If I talk about, there's all sorts of weird crossovers, things that mean different terms in UK English, even though it's the same language, like 99.5% the same language, but it's just different words, to let versus to rent. So how do these things work? Well, the short version is this, but this is also the unhelpful version. Companies like Microsoft and Google and OpenAI essentially take as much text as they can get their hands on, with or without respecting copyright, and stuff it into machines. And what these machines do is a series of processes. Now, we're not going to talk about most of the processes because that involves math, and I'm fairly certain most of you would prefer not to have linear algebra and calculus at 9 a.m. But the first two parts here at the very bottom are important: embedding and positional encoding. When we take in all of this language, we have to look at how words work, right? If I search for "I'm brewing the tea" as a phrase, and I look across the internet, there are all these words that go with it, from reviews, from articles, from blog posts, from YouTubers. "I'm brewing the tea" often correlates with words like taste and smell. These are words that are associated with it. And when we're doing the construction of a large language model, we're really just looking at probabilities, right? What these machines do, because they can't read, they have no sentience. Anyone who's concerned about machines, coming alive and taking your job, we are far from that, because machines have no agency. They can't think for themselves. They don't even know what they're doing. All they're doing is probability calculations. So when you take a piece of text, you assign numbers to each word. Regardless of the word order, the numbers get assigned, and then the machines look at the probabilities of one word being to the next. Prior to last year, if I said "God save the," what's the next word? Queen, right? And now it's, right. Probabilities. It's probably not "God save the rutabaga," right? That's probably not a phrase you often utter. Machines can't comprehend. They don't know anything about what they're doing. All they're doing is assigning probability. So one of those reviews, if we took that review and we assigned numbers to it, then we're going to create essentially a probability matrix. What is the likely next word? And so by reading most of the public internet, that's how these large language models are constructed. That's why they can do such cool things, and why they can go off the rails pretty easily, because they're just reciting probabilities. When you see somebody talking about a large language model and how many billion parameters it has, all that's code for is, hey, here's how many probabilities we have built into this thing to correctly guess that you're saying "God save the king" and not "God save the rutabaga." When you put in a prompt, when you talk to these things, as you're interfacing with them, they're just running probabilities, right? What's the next logical word? Depends on where you are and the context, right? Probably "I'm brewing the tea." Maybe "I'm brewing the fall of capitalism." Not sure. But that's what these machines are doing. That's all they're doing, is assignment of probability. So how do we talk to them? There's a discipline that is relatively new called prompt engineering, where we ask the machines to do something with natural language. We don't write code. We're not using C or Java or Python. We're just talking to it as though we were talking to another person. Again, "You shall know a word by the company it keeps." Here's an example. I told them, this is OpenAI's GPT-4 model. I said, write a short paragraph about B2B marketing strategy. That was the prompt. I gave it relatively few words. And so it's having to guess and generate based on probability from that very short sentence. And here's what it came up with. B2B marketing strategy is a comprehensive approach that businesses employ, blah, blah, blah. If you read through this paragraph, it's pretty bland. Right? There's nothing here that's going to make you go, wow, this was really insightful, machine, thank you. It's a recitation of the general probabilities around the words that I gave it. If I gave it a different phrase, write a short paragraph about B2B marketing strategy with an emphasis on email marketing and lead generation. "You shall know a word by the company it keeps." Now with these new words, it has more to latch onto, so it's going to create better text. It's going to create better output. B2B strategy with a focus on email marketing aims to attract and nurture high-quality leads, and so on and so forth. If I go one step further and I give it a big prompt, I give it a lot of words to grab onto, a lot of words to understand what I'm saying, you will act as a business writer. You have knowledge of marketing, particularly B2B marketing. Write a short paragraph about B2B marketing strategy with an emphasis on email marketing and lead generation. Focus on reduction of churn and increase audience loyalty. Include details about marketing automation and lead scoring. Write in a warm, professional tone of voice. Write at a 12th grade readability level. Write the paragraph. Now, when you look at the output, because I've given it so many more words to work with, it understands better what I'm trying to do. It pulls more probabilities, and it creates better outputs. This is the essence of talking to large language models, either individually as people or programmatically. The more relevant words you give these things, the better they'll perform. Most of the prompts that I use, for example, are about between half a page and a page full of text, because you need that much text if you want really interesting, innovative outputs. I was talking to a friend the other day whose music professor was saying that to write a concert review, and the professor said, well, these models will never do as good a job as a human. He had used like a 2-sentence prompt. I said, okay, let's try this. Here's a page full of text, all the details. Handed it to the professor, and the professor went, oh, and some profanity. It was a bit eye-opening to see what the models do the more text you give them. So what can these things do? Well, here's the short version. If it's text, it can do it. And if it is text, it can do it. So, real simple ones that we all know. You will act as a blogger. You have expertise in blogging. Write a blog post outline for the following question. How do you build a predictive analytics algorithm? Of course, it does the thing, right? This is the use case most people are using these tools for. It's just generations, one of the four core capabilities. And they're very good at it. Again, the more detailed you are with your prompts, the better. Here's one. You're an expert social media manager. You are skilled at crafting social media posts that garner high engagement on services like Twitter, TikTok, etc. So create a YouTube caption from this text. So it basically fed it a long transcript from a video and said, write a YouTube caption because I'm feeling lazy today and I don't want to do that. I want you to write in a way that says, the summary should not give away too many details so that the reader is compelled to watch the video, right? So giving it some more instructions as to what kind of output we want it to do. And it summarizes all the text. This is a fun and slightly unnerving one. You can tell it, for example, to do a personality assessment. So I want you to do a Big 5 personality assessment. If you're familiar, for those who have psychology degrees, if you're familiar with the Big 5 personality scores, this is one of the ways to understand different aspects of someone's personality. So I fed it a set of emails. Actually, no, I fed it a set of Discord posts from this one person in a Discord server and said, tell me about this person's personality. And it spit out this lovely explanation, you know, and the scores and numbers. Imagine being able to take, for example, in a customer service setting, in a client services setting, maybe you have a new client that you're trying to understand, so you feed your first few emails from that client to a large language model and say, okay, tell me about this client's personality. Right? Tell me what kind of, maybe, who should I assign to this client's team? Who has complementary personality traits? A very, very interesting application. Here's one. You're an expert programmer in the programming language R. You typically make heavy use of libraries like dplyr, stringer, JSONLite, etc. And here's some background information. Basically, I wrote out the instructions of what I wanted the code to do and said, you write the code for me. And it did. And it wrote some lovely code here that chopped about 4 hours off of a task I was trying to do. It got it about 95% correct. Now, the problem with code is that it has to be 100% correct to function. So you do still need some domain expertise to understand, like, okay, this code did not work because of this, but it is a magnificent time saver. Another example, you will act as a social media manager for martial arts schools, and you're going to write some Instagram suggestions, suggested photo and the suggested caption. However, what we did was we fed it the reviews. So imagine going on to like G2 Crowd, for example, or Capterra, or any of the sort of the B2B software exchanges, and copying all of the reviews that people have left for your software, maybe the 5-star ones, and say, I want you to write social media content from our best reviews. What does that do? That allows you to use the actual voice of the customer to write compelling social media content, right? Because we all have our biases. We think our software is, better, faster, cheaper, and all that stuff. But the reality is, our customers are the ones that tell us what they think. So if we can use our customers' language with large language models to create social media content, it's going to resonate better because it's literally their words that we're using. Another favorite of mine, I like to record everything, hence why I'm wearing all these microphones, and then feed it to an AI to transcribe things. Now, if you've ever looked at a transcript, particularly an AI-made transcript, it's full of language that is probably a little rough around the edges, a lot of and and things like that. Filler. I said, I want you to take this very long transcript of a client call and just make meeting notes and action items. Tell me who's doing what and things. So a 45-minute client call becomes a set of meeting notes and action items very, very quickly. I don't need a human virtual assistant for this anymore. I can just have a machine do this now. Very straightforward, and it did a fantastic job. And again, this is what most of these models are capable of doing. Another use case, a person in the entertainment industry sent me an NDA. This NDA was a little on the wanting side. I asked them later and said, oh yeah, I copied it off the internet. I'm like, I can tell. So I said, let's take the large language model and have it rewrite the NDA properly with all the clauses that are missing that should be in there, and let's have it tell me what's missing. And it rewrote the NDA very nicely, and then had an actual human lawyer look at it to verify that it was in fact correct and complete. And the lawyer said, yes, it's mostly complete, just change this 1 or 2 things here. Again, got it 95 to 99% right. Could I have just used the machine output as was? Yeah, The stuff that our lawyer flagged was minor at best. It was not a deal breaker. So imagine being able to take something like a contract, right? If you're considering hiring a vendor or an agency, say, read this contract and tell me if I should sign it. I'm specifically concerned about confidentiality, or I'm specifically concerned about intellectual property ownership. Have the large language model read the entire contract and then flag, yes, you should sign this, or no, there's clauses in here that you have said you don't want to sign for. You can have it do executive coaching. You can have it do things like mission statements. I had it digest down a whole bunch of statements from a group of people into a single mission statement, and it did. And if you've ever worked at a company where, as an executive, you have sat through the 2-day retreat, which consists of a lot of navel gazing, some heavy drinking, and you end up with sort of a wishy-washy statement at the end, you can do the same thing minus the 2 days and minus the drink. Well, you can still do the drinking. In moments with a large language model, just give it all the feedback from your different executives, from your stakeholders, from your customers, and say, write a mission statement based on all this information that is concise, condensed, and makes good sense. Right? So executive coaching and leadership tasks. You can do very simple, straightforward stuff. You will act as an SEO expert. Here's the information about my company. Give me some keywords so I can go test in an SEO tool. What's nice about the way large language models work, remember, you shall know a word by the company it keeps. It's going to put together words and phrases that are not in the text I gave it because it knows that, for example, change management consulting is related to management strategy. So it will come up with keywords for you that for search engine optimization purposes that you might not have thought of. And I've found actually a number of blind spots in mine and my own customers' strategies just by doing this. Here's another one. I would need you to write a privacy policy for my website, right? And the wizards that are online, yeah, some of them are good, some of them are not so much. But I specifically want you to tackle certain tasks, certain things like Google Tag Manager, and incorporate that to the privacy policy. And it does this. It can do it for GDPR, for CCPA, CPRA, the 8 new laws that took effect in America, the Chinese version. Again, there's plenty of information on the internet about what these laws are and how people should comply with them. So all the model is doing is assigning probabilities, bless you. All the model is doing is assigning probabilities for what to put into a document. So this sounds like an amazing set of tools. We should immediately all run and adopt them. There are some things you might want to be careful of. A few of these things are bias. So in OpenAI's statement itself, this is provided by the company. This is the warning label. For example, we found that our models more strongly associate European American names with positive sentiment when compared to African American names and negative stereotypes with Black women. Now, if you are maybe integrating a model into your CRM or your customer support system, and you have a customer, say, named Letitia, and you have a customer named Linda, right? How will the model behave when it generates email marketing copy or chat conversations? There's going to be a bias built in. So a huge part of adopting any kind of AI technology is having human beings throughout the process that can fact check it and say, it's not doing what we thought it should be doing. The challenges for a lot of companies, we've had a lot of people sort of do these diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives over the last 5 or 10 years, and these are very good things to do. But a lot of it tends to be window dressing as opposed to incorporating into the processes of our companies. With the advent and the use of AI, we need to take those people who are doing DEI work sort of generally and give them very specific tasks to say, you are now going to start fact-checking machines to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing, that they are not perpetuating biases that we don't want them to be. Now, all these things are really cool, right? You go in, you type some stuff, you get an output. This does not scale very well, right? You copying and pasting all day, probably not the best use of your time, and it does not scale well. So how do we make these things scale better? Well, a few things are going to happen in the very, very near future, and possibly by the time I get off the stage. Yeah, these slides were done last night because things keep changing. We are seeing integration across the board. So here's ChatGPT inside Microsoft Visual Studio Code. I right-clicked on my code and I said, inspect this code for bugs. And it did. It told me all the things I'd done wrong and ways I could do it better. Right? So I'm not now working, copying, pasting back and forth between windows. It's just going to be in the products that we use every day. Microsoft announced this recently with Copilot. This is coming to Microsoft Office this year. Copilot is the little chat box throughout Office that will integrate and allow anyone who's using Microsoft Office to do crazy stuff like create a 10-slide presentation from a press release, right? Take this Excel spreadsheet and turn it into a memo. It is astonishing, and it is broad and far-reaching, right? This is literally going to be in your desk, every single person. What this means is that you are now a software developer, and every person at your company is a software developer. Because when you're writing in a large language model, what are you doing? You are giving instructions to a machine to accomplish a task. What do you do when you write Python or Java or C? You're writing instructions to a machine to tell it what to do. Fundamentally, every person who uses a large language model is now a developer. You may not think you are because you're not writing code, but you are writing code. So part of what you're going to need to do as a company is to start thinking about this. How are we going to set up processes and boundaries about this? I am sure everyone and their cousin has seen a post on social media saying, hey, check out my free book of 50 prompts for ChatGPT. That's fine. That person is essentially open sourcing their code, right? Do you want to be doing that with your company's intellectual property? Because when someone writes a prompt, they are creating intellectual property. They're creating code, right? What's the process for refining these things, making them better? Software development. So every employee will need some level of training to understand how to develop better software. Because when you write a prompt, you're writing software. Okay? This is all that's happening behind the scenes is OpenAI's tool is parsing our prompts and turning them into stuff that its model can execute. It's very straightforward. Then you can really scale these things. If you find a prompt that works really well, you work with the developer and say, let's systematize this. Right? Maybe you write a really good prompt that does meeting note summarization. You work with the developer to tie it into an existing system. Maybe you have a prompt that summarizes client interactions out of your CRM. You work with the developer, and now it does it for every single customer in your CRM. You no longer have to do it manually. The summaries, the updates, the suggestions will be there. Right? That's how these things scale. It's not through copying and pasting faster. It's through systematizing and integrating it so that you have the ability to use the best prompts in your company to build more software. The janitor that figured out a prompt to put his timesheets in faster in Excel may come up with your company's next piece of enterprise software. Right? If you discover a prompt and a model that works really well, every person in your company can be creating software that can dramatically improve the productivity of your company. Everyone is a developer. You are a developer. You may not have thought so. You may like, I didn't go to school for this, but you are. How's this going to impact marketing? Well, it already is. First, let's talk about search. So this is Google Bard. I said, what do you know about the consulting company TrustInsights? Because I'm a narcissistic egomaniac. It spits out a bunch of stuff. This is fine. What's not on here that we're used to using Google for? Something to click on, right? That's a bit of a problem if you're getting a lot of traffic from organic search. Right? This doesn't really help my company. Brand maybe, but there's no traffic from this. Right? Here's Microsoft Bing. Tell me about TrustInsights. And down here, you can see, is it irony? No, it's not irony. The first link to click on is LinkedIn, which is a Microsoft property. Gee, I wonder where all that traffic's going. This gets worse with unbranded search. When you ask for something like, what are some B2B marketing strategies, right? Here's OpenAI's. What do you know about the consulting company TrustInsights? Again, there's no links to click there. Nothing. What are some good resources to learn about the marketing technology industry? Right, this is, again, Google Bard. You'll note right here is the only way that somebody can get more information. It's actually really poorly done. It then just tells you, it gives you a link to click on to actually Google it. I don't know who designed this. If you are, say, Propolis, right, and you're a company, you want traffic for unbranded search, this is not your friend. This is your enemy because A, your company's not listed there, and B, even if they were, you're not getting any traffic from it. Right? What are some good resources to learn about the marketing technology industry? At least Microsoft uses something to click on. Oh, look, Bing is the #1 result. Thanks, Microsoft. OpenAI, again, not a clickable link in the house. So one of your first tasks is to go to Bing Webmaster Tools, Google Search Console, and just count up what percentage of your search traffic is important to your company, what percentage is unbranded search. The unbranded search is going away, right? So if 60% of your website traffic is organic search and half of that is unbranded, you've optimized for keywords that are the generic terms, that's going away. As people adopt these tools, that is going away. So if SEO and organic search is important to your company, you have to get started now adapting to this stuff. And there's 3 things you should be doing. Number 1, build your brand. Right? Your brand is the only thing that is going to save your butt. If people don't know who you are, they don't know how to ask for you by name, you will be invisible. Imagine essentially the way the world was before search engines. How did people find out about you? Through word of mouth. How do they do that? Through brand. Right? That is critical. If brand building is not a core pillar of your strategy for this year, it needs to be. Go home and harass your executives. 2, you need a publication of some kind, some way to directly reach people that's not intermediated by someone else's AI. LinkedIn, there's an AI involved, 7 of them. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. AI is in the way. Organic search, AI has been in the way for a while, even more so now with large language models. AI is in the way all the time. Having something like text messaging, email newsletters, even print, something that is guaranteed to get to the person in the way that you intended, is a valid strategy. And 3rd, you need a community. Some kind of community platform that allows you to stay in touch with your audience without intermediation. So services like Slack, this is the Analytics for Marketers Slack community that I run. It's got about 3,000 members. It's been one of the best business drivers for us in the last 4 years because we can stay in touch with people and get them to remember who we are, build and reinforce our brand. If you're starting out today and you've got an audience that's predominantly under the age of 35, you should have a Discord service, right? You should set up a server in Discord. It will save your butt. Even Telegram, right? It's any place where AI is not in the way. Those 3 things, brand, publication, community, are what's going to save your butt when AI decides to eat more of your lunch. Now, let's answer the question everybody has. Who's going to lose their jobs? The Brookings Institute politely said this a while back. AI will take away tasks, not jobs. This is technically true. The reality is this. A marketer who is skillful with AI is going to take the job of a marketer who is not. If you are skilled using AI tools, you have an advantage. If you are not skilled, you will not be first in line for anything because, again, hey, Microsoft Excel has an AI built into it now. Someone who's talented at using Excel with a large language model is more valuable than someone who's good at Excel without that. So that's who's going to lose their jobs. Here's how it's going to work. Imagine you had your workday split up into hour-long tasks. As AI starts to eat more of those tasks, this is what people's workday starts to look like. Now, if you work at a progressive company, that company's going to say, great, you've got 4 extra hours in your day. Let's upskill you. Let's have you do work that's more suited for human beings. Let's have you talk to customers, right? Because it's very hard to do. A regressive company is going to say, hey, look at all these tasks we can move around, and there's a position we can get rid of. Right? So if you have a writing team, for example, of 50 people in your company, and you adopt large language models, 25 of those people are probably going to be looking for work by the end of the year because the machines can do that first draft. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be good enough, and it's going to be enough to consolidate tasks. So it depends on the kind of company you work for, whether it's progressive or regressive, that will determine whether or not there's going to be a large amount of jobs lost. There will be. There will be. And the people who will be affected most are the people who are the most junior in their careers because those are the tasks that are easily automated. Those are the tasks that are language-based for the most part, right? So a senior leader's tasks, developing strategy and sitting down and talking, taking someone out to a steak dinner. Machines can't do that yet, and I'm not sure anyone would want them to. But write a first draft of a press release, write a blog post, write some social media posts, it's going away. So what's next? Now that we've got your attention, this is the watchword for the next year. The word is multimodal. What this means is machines are now starting to do more in different formats with language. Here's an example. I gave a machine some lyrics and said, write me some guitar tabs, and it did. I had a friend play this out loud, and it guessed reasonably well how the song should sound just based on the lyrics. That's a very simple example. OpenAI's new model, GPT-4, will be able to take an image input and do text with it. So imagine taking a screenshot, for example, of your Salesforce instance, the charts and graphs, and say, interpret this for me. Right? Write me a report about what's happening in our marketing, and it will do that. Bing, in its latest iteration, has done image generation. Right? So now your search engine is going to do content creation in wild and different ways. I said, give me a photograph of the Thames River in London at sunset with a dinosaur sipping a cocktail on the shore. And it did a pretty credible job of this. Right? I think those are all reasonably good images of the Thames and a variety of dinosaurs and cocktails. Do you need to be an expert coder to do this? No, you just got to be able to write words. Who's going to be the best creators of this software? People who can write well. Right? So that's something else to think about. Who in your company are the good writers? The people who can use language skillfully. It's not going to be the coders. It might be the PR people. Right? It might be the bloggers. It might be the admin. Right? Everyone's going to have their own software. This multimodal stuff is going to totally change how we do artificial intelligence, how we talk to machines over the next few months. It's already released, it's not public yet. But being able to feed images to machines, like tell me who's in this photo. If I took a photo of this room, I could have it do facial recognition, tell me who's sitting in this room, or read your badges from the photo. Right? That's the sort of thing that you'll be able to do. I want to leave you with these 3 thoughts. Everyone is a developer now. You are a developer. In the world of large language models, anyone who can use language is a developer. Everything is software because writing is how we communicate. So everything is software now. And every word that you use, all the writing, all the content you create is an opportunity to create new software. So thank you very much.
I don't know what you thought about that, but I just thought, wow, that's just blown my mind first thing this morning in the conference only half an hour. Chris is amazing, absolutely amazing. And I also like the fact you positioned it in a very positive, opportunistic way, because I think we're all used to seeing presentations of AI where it's all like, it's the apocalypse, everyone's going to be after your jobs and everything. So we've got time for questions. Have anyone's got a question?
You got 2 minutes for questions. There's a person with the microphone, so raise your hand if you have a question.
Usually that old-fashioned technology raising your hand. My question to you, though, is if you look at the kind of, the images of the kind of, man crawling, man standing up, man running, in that kind of evolutionary journey. I mean, where are we in that journey? Are we primordial swamp at the moment in terms of AI, or how far into that kind of AI journey are we, do you think?
We're probably still on the crawl stage. Okay. And the reason why is that machines today are not sentient. They're not self-aware. If you think about it, you open up GPT-4 or ChatGPT, it just sits there. It does nothing. It has no agency. Whereas your dog, right, will get up and chase things, pee on the couch or whatever. It has agency of its own. Machines have no agency because the computational power doesn't exist for that yet. Within the next 5 or 10 years, it will. What will do that will be what's called quantum computing, where a machine can have multiple operational states at the same time. This is something that Google and IBM and all big tech companies are trying to investigate. Right now, they're highly unstable. They're very, very unpredictable. They also have to operate at near absolute zero temperatures, which is challenging. But the architecture of computing is so different in those that they can support enough computing power for a machine to become self-aware.
That starts to get very scary at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, but interesting anyway, nonetheless. So it's coming, it's moving very fast. Any questions? Anybody?
Right here.
Right down the front. So Amy.
So things like search engine optimization, people have been able to add words to their websites,
yes,
to make them more easily findable. how much is there machine learning in terms of actually teaching the models that actually our company is the right answer, or actually training it to find us and suggest them?
It depends on which model and how it's being used. So if you look, for example, at the way Bing operates with the GPT-4 integration, Bing is not asking the model directly for information. What Bing is doing is it's querying its own index first, and then passing the results through GPT-4 to make a coherent response. We're not sure how Bard works yet. There's no good indication about how Google trained the Palm model. It does seem like it has some level of timeliness. OpenAI, as we know for sure, crawls the web like once a year and ingests all the information and then updates its model. So a couple things to do on that front. One, when you're publishing content, make sure that you're obviously using the language that's appropriate, and then pollute it with your brand, right? It sounds so egotistical, narcissistic, like, oh, and Trust Insights is offering this thing about this. But because, again, a word is known by the company it keeps, if your portion of that, the tiny slice in that model is associated with those terms you care about and your brand, you'll have some greater level of association with that. The thing to do is, among other things, hire a really good PR agency, because again, you want to have a lot of text on the web about your brand and your topic. So if that's news articles, it's publications, academic publications, books, you name it. If there's text about it that can be associated to you, the more of that there is, the more probabilities there are in large language models for that. We don't know how the search engines are going to adapt. So what we can be certain about is that you'll always be able to buy ads. So you will want to set aside greater budget for your search ads.
I mean, if anyone's going to win from this, it's definitely going to be selling advertising, obviously. So, yeah. Chris, I have a feeling you could talk for another half an hour.
I could talk for the rest of the day about this,
It's got a lot to say.
but I can't.
The moral of the story is we all need to be narcissists going forward. That's what a lovely way to end the session. But in all seriousness, Chris, thank you so much for your...
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.